Brace yourselves, because what you're about to witness is the most explosive political confrontation in Australian history. Anthony Albanese walked into what he thought was a friendly regional gathering and instead got absolutely blindsided by Barnaby Joyce in a political ambush so devastating that the Prime Minister's entire energy agenda is now hanging by a thread. We're talking tractors blocking exits, furious farmers with pitchforks of rage, and Barnaby Joyce orchestrating the most brutal takedown of a sitting Prime Minister since Bob Hawke called out Malcolm Fraser. If you think you've seen political theatre before, think again, because this Bush Summit showdown makes question time look like a kindergarten tea party. The mainstream media is desperately trying to downplay this story, Labour's spinning damage control faster than a wind turbine in a cyclone, and Albanese's office is probably conducting emergency meetings as we speak. But here's the explosive truth they don't want you to know: Barnaby Joyce just delivered a political masterstroke so brilliant, so utterly devastating to Labour's green energy fantasies, that it might actually force the Prime Minister to abandon his entire net zero agenda or face complete political annihilation. Picture this absolute chaos. Anthony Albanese rocks up to the NSW Bush Summit thinking he's going to deliver some feel-good speech about supporting regional Australia, maybe throw around a few infrastructure promises and pose 4 photos with farmers, but instead walks straight into what can only be described as the political equivalent of Custer's last stand. We're talking about tractors literally blocking escape routes, angry farmers armed with genuine grievances about their livelihoods being destroyed, and Barnaby Joyce conducting this symphony of rural revolt like some kind of political maestro who's been planning this ambush for months. Here's what actually went down at this Bush Summit, and why Labour's internal polling is probably showing numbers that would make a statistician weep. Barnaby Joyce, the former Nationals leader who's made a career out of saying what city politicians are too scared to admit, put out a call for farmers and regional Australians to protest against what he called the onslaught of wind farms, solar installations, and transmission lines that are carving up rural Australia like some kind of industrial invasion. This wasn't just a polite policy disagreement, this was a declaration of war against everything Albanese's government represents. The sheer audacity of Joyce's strategy is breathtaking when you really break it down. While Labour politicians sit in their Canberra offices drawing lines on maps and deciding which bits of regional Australia to sacrifice for their renewable energy targets, Barnaby went directly to the people whose lives are being destroyed by these policies and gave them a platform to fight back. It's David versus Goliath, except David brought a tractor and about 500 of his mates. But here's where this story gets more explosive than a gas leak at a welding convention. The protesters at the Bush Summit didn't just hold up polite signs and sing Kumbaya, they used tractors and fire engines to block Victorian Premier Jacinta Allen from leaving the venue. When farmers get angry about energy policy, they don't write strongly worded letters to the editor, they bring heavy agricultural machinery and turn political events into siege warfare. It's like road rage, but with legitimate political grievances and the equipment to back it up. The political optics of this confrontation are absolutely devastating for Albanese and his government. Here's the Prime Minister, supposedly the champion of working-class Australians, getting completely schooled by actual working-class Australians who are furious about his energy policies. While he's been jet-setting around international climate conferences making promises to foreign leaders, the people who actually have to live with the consequences of those promises have been organising, planning, and preparing for exactly this kind of confrontation. Barnaby Joyce's masterful orchestration of this protest reveals a level of political sophistication that the Canberra bubble consistently underestimates. This wasn't some spontaneous uprising, this was a carefully planned political operation designed to expose the massive gap between Labour's green energy rhetoric and the reality of what these policies mean for regional communities. Joyce turned a routine political speech into a referendum on the entire renewable energy transition. The economic arguments that Joyce deployed during this confrontation are absolutely devastating to Labour's narrative. He pointed out that the march of renewables is pushing power prices through the roof while reliability plummets through the floor. But here's the killer blow: these renewable energy projects are predominantly owned by overseas companies, which means the profits are flowing out of Australia while regional communities bear all the costs. It's economic colonialism disguised as environmental progress. Joyce's comment that these overseas companies are not doing it because they want to save the environment, they want to make a lot of money, cuts straight to the heart of the entire renewable energy scam that's been perpetrated on Australian communities. While politicians talk about saving the planet, multinational corporations are making billions by destroying rural landscapes and driving up electricity costs for ordinary families. The visual imagery of this confrontation is politically priceless and absolutely toxic for Albanese's government. Picture the Prime Minister of Australia essentially trapped at a regional summit by angry farmers with legitimate grievances about their livelihoods being destroyed by his policies. This isn't just bad optics, this is the kind of political disaster that ends careers and brings down governments. What makes Joyce's strategy even more brilliant is how he's positioned this as a fight for Australian sovereignty against foreign corporate interests. While Labour politicians preach about multiculturalism and international cooperation, Joyce is standing up for Australian farmers against overseas companies that are literally carving up our countryside for profit. It's economic nationalism at its most effective, and it's resonating with voters who feel abandoned by both major parties. The fact that Joyce recently called for net zero to be completely scrapped adds another layer of significance to this confrontation. He's not just opposing specific renewable energy projects, he's challenging the entire ideological framework that underpins Labour's energy policy. This is a fundamental philosophical battle about Australia's future, disguised as a regional protest about wind farms. Labour's response to this political ambush has been predictably pathetic and tone-deaf. Instead of addressing the legitimate concerns raised by farmers and regional communities, they've tried to dismiss the protests as orchestrated political theatre. But here's the problem with that strategy: when your political opponents can organize hundreds of farmers with tractors to ambush your events, maybe the problem isn't the theatre, maybe the problem is your policies. The broader implications of this Bush Summit showdown extend far beyond one embarrassing day for the Prime Minister. Joyce has demonstrated that there's a massive reservoir of anger and frustration in regional Australia about renewable energy policies, and he's shown that this anger can be mobilized into effective political action. This isn't just protest, this is the foundation of a potential political revolution. Albanese's humiliation at the Bush Summit reveals the fundamental weakness of Labour's entire approach to energy policy. They've been making decisions in boardrooms and international forums without consulting the communities that have to live with the consequences. Joyce's ambush forced them to confront the reality that their policies are creating genuine hardship and anger among the very people they claim to represent. The strategic timing of this confrontation couldn't have been more perfect from Joyce's perspective. With energy prices soaring and reliability concerns mounting, he chose exactly the right moment to force a public debate about renewable energy policies. While Labour's been hoping these issues would quietly fade away, Joyce made sure they exploded into public consciousness in the most dramatic way possible. What's particularly devastating for Albanese is how Joyce managed to turn what should have been friendly political territory into hostile ground. The Bush Summit was supposed to be an opportunity for the Prime Minister to connect with regional voters and demonstrate his commitment to rural Australia. Instead, it became a public trial where his policies were judged by the people most affected by them, and the verdict was overwhelmingly negative. The agricultural machinery aspect of this protest adds a layer of authentic grassroots anger that no amount of political spin can dismiss. When farmers bring their tractors to block politicians from leaving events, that's not astroturfing or manufactured outrage, that's genuine fury from people whose livelihoods are being threatened by government policies. Joyce tapped into something real and powerful that Labour completely failed to anticipate. The economic nationalism angle that Joyce deployed during this confrontation is politically toxic for Labour's entire renewable energy agenda. By highlighting that these projects primarily benefit overseas companies while imposing costs on Australian communities, he's reframed the entire debate from environmental protection to economic sovereignty. It's a brilliant political move that puts Labour on the defensive on multiple fronts. Joyce's ability to organise this level of grassroots political action demonstrates something that terrifies Labour strategists: there's a genuine political movement brewing in regional Australia that's completely outside their control. This isn't just opposition politics, this is the emergence of an alternative power base that could reshape Australian politics if it continues to grow. The visual of the Prime Minister essentially under siege by angry farmers at a regional summit is the kind of political imagery that defines entire careers. Albanese walked into that event as the leader of the government, but he walked out looking like a politician who's completely lost touch with the communities he's supposed to serve. Joyce orchestrated a political theatre piece that exposed Labour's fundamental weakness. This Bush Summit ambush represents a turning point in Australian energy politics. Joyce has shown that renewable energy policies can't be imposed on rural communities without serious political consequences. He's demonstrated that there's organised, effective opposition to Labour's net zero agenda, and he's given that opposition a public platform and a powerful voice. The implications of this confrontation will reverberate through Australian politics for months to come. Joyce hasn't just embarrassed the Prime Minister, he's exposed the deep fault lines in Labour's electoral coalition and demonstrated that their energy policies are politically unsustainable in regional Australia. This could be the beginning of the end for Albanese's renewable energy transition, and Joyce might have just positioned himself as the leader of the opposition movement that brings it down. If you thought tonight's story was wild, trust me, what happens next will blow your mind. So don't stop now. Click on the video right here on your screen to continue the chaos, the drama, and the inside scoop only we deliver. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and join the Australian News CC family where the real stories come to life. See you in the next one.